Okay, welcome to Poetry and Gardening. I'm going to give it a minute while people are showing up, and you can see them clicking in. Here with John Trimble and Sunny Wilkinson. I am Laura Stott. And we are recording this live. Okay, well, maybe I'll just make this official. So, and for now, you can see all three of us participating today. But I'll be switching it to active speaker mode soon, so we can have our focus on our speakers. But I just want to welcome everybody, and I'm so glad that you came to join us. And just a huge thank you to Sunny Wilkinson, our poet, and John Trimble, our gardener, who are here today with their expertise. Poetry and gardening are the two things in my life, like two of the biggest things that saved my life. So I was happy to kind of have a marriage of those worlds today. I want to thank Catherine Coles, the poet Catherine Coles in Salt Lake City, for her vision. She started this fieldwork series for poetry and science, and I appreciate her permission to continue that up here in northern Utah. And also a huge thank you to Utah Humanities and the Engaged Learning Series at Weber State University, and importantly, Oasis Community Garden here in Ogden, Utah, in the Junior League. So originally we were hoping to host this event in person at Oasis Community Garden, and they have just been such a huge valuable resource for this event and also in our community. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we're going to have to do it this way, but I hope it still finds you wherever you are. And to begin, we're going to start with Sunny Wilkinson and hear some poems about gardening, and then we'll turn the time over to John. So, okay. Thank you, Sunny. I'll let you take it away.
Okay. So, thank you. I thought I would start with a poem that I wrote last year, and it is kind of the tail end of things. It's the canning part. One of my favorite things to do in the fall is to can the awesome fruits and vegetables that I've spent time growing. So this one is called Canning Tomatoes Late August. And I wrote it during the California wildfires. The west is burning, Yosemite in ash, smoke choking blue sky, and all afternoon I've cleaned jars, rim and round belly, stuffed in mounds of fleshy fires, the garden ignited under green. They'll burn bright in soups all winter, in sauces my boys splatter on their mouths, ruby smack and long stained. But now at the counter, their museum, the freak exhibit, 100 hearts packed puzzle-like, swollen tongues of summer severed, apothecary charms from a century of plagues. If I cut out the breast of the robin, would it look like this? Pitched crimson of poppies, the shape and sheen of bloody knuckles of street fighters tucked and quivering, or the rooftops of Salzburg, whose castle's torture chamber made us shiver, all that scarlet hidden between the floorboards and masks, cardinal sins loud with telling. How macabre for such lightness. I'll confess this. I'm sick with love for the rust of each globe, the way I cut and plunge them into jars, the way my mother did when I was young, and she was happy the first time, and the garden said yes in red, red, red. So that's a little kind of an ode to tomatoes. Love tomatoes. This next one is about snails. We just moved to a new home, and we've been here for about 6 months, and we started collecting snail shells that we found in the flower beds, and we are at 43 right now. So big, beautiful snail shells. So this is called Snails, a Love Poem. And there are several sections, so I'll just read the number of each section. So, Snails, a Love Poem. 1. September, and they come like a silent army to the rocks, the yarrow, the dirt fetid and wet, each one thumb-sized and curled in calcium, that Greco-Roman spiral staircase endlessly leading in. Cornu aspersum in Latin, a mollusk meaning shell, meaning damp, an equation of skeleton plus gelatin, one giant muscle reaching out, pulling the world closer. The Heiner girls carry one down the street, cupping their hands before them on their walk to school, sweaty already, delighted at the find. And we find it a home in the hostas, all that suffocating green. 2. Nature's haiku in the garden, long neck and a petticoat of stone. 3. We run over one in the dark, shell and pink smeared across one patch of driveway next morning, biggest yet, thick cartilage clinging to the ramparts, jelly and bone. 4. This one's traveled mailbox to front steps in 5 hours. Atlas in miniature. It's hard work carrying the world. You try it. The miracle is moving at all. 5. This one stuck on the side of the whitewashed hen house turned playhouse poses as a pebble. My son puts his ear to the opening like a beach shell. Instead of waves, he hears a movement like someone turning over in bed. 6. We both listen closely. Speak up, friend. Your mouth is full of earth. 7. When the God of all creatures comes again, he'll unleash the songs of snails. Clear, bright arias singing thunder, honeysuckle, oh rapturous rain. Okay, this is a silly one. It's okay to get silly in poems. I think it's fun. Last year in the fall, I came across a very interesting specimen, I should say, of carrot. So this is a funny little poem celebrating that. Last carrot dig before snow. I find it corkscrewed under the last mass of green hair in the long, fine row at the end of the garden patch. Waves of curves wedged in dirt. I have to dig deeper until finally it's loose. Unlike the ramrod soldier straight variety at Fresh Market, this one's busty up top, a crease-like cleavage and twisted at the hips, like the models in the lingerie ads my brother once hid in his yearbook, each girl an S shape, one leg winding down, and at the end, thin as a whip, the Jessica Rabbit of carrots, or a question, what's up, toots? I wonder if this is nature's little joke, a poke in the ribs, this Marilyn Monroe of carrots, Victoria's secret garden, pin-up produce, of course, soiled, sultry even, as in, happy birthday, Mr. President, breathy and coy, sassy, star of this season's vegetables behaving badly. Unable to bear the thought of peeler or knife, I set it here beside my computer. No salad for you, little muse. You'll dish to me all the wild embraces, the wonders of life under there. Who's tangled with whom? I mean all the dirt. I really did find this like very sexy carrot, and I thought, where did this come from? So I had to write a poem about it. Okay, one more. My father's grandfather recently passed away, and he grew up on a farm, and he farmed, and sorry, you can hear my parrots or my parakeets behind me. He grew up on a farm, and he farmed and he gardened his whole life. And I was thinking about what he took in his whole life and how the earth and all of those wonderful things that he took in every day meant to him and how they built his life. So this is called Poem in the Voice of My Husband's Grandfather. Goodbye, world, muscular and strange. Goodbye, hostas breaking through mud, and the moon like an aspirin in water dissolving. Goodbye, hands holding a fork over quivering poached eggs, wrapped thick around the neck of the garden shovel, or holding her hand at night across the bed, 65 years. Goodbye, hullabaloo and horse racing, a child on my knee and a slap on my leg. Goodbye, farm, my life's love. You too I'd kiss full upon the lips. All those ordinary lives hung on the hinges of you like battered doors. Dandelions around the shanty. Bulls grazing on the sledding hill. 88 years, your child. Every stick I lifted from the grass. Each spring's first mowing, each fence post mending or reaching for my parents' vanished hands. Goodbye, body. A tanked out Chevy, torn vinyl and busted springs. Goodbye, deer, nuzzling the first crop of strawberries, munching each one slowly, knowing they will not last. Goodbye, faces bright as summer trout. Goodbye, crocus. You too, swollen this snowy March morning, waiting for the moment your body opens for the pistol fire inside like a lantern to rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Okay. Thank you so much, Sunny. That was so beautiful. And I just want to let everybody know, I've been thinking about this event for probably a year, and it's been in the planning for a while. And we did have to make some changes to it, but from the very beginning, I always wanted Sunny to be our poet because she has such beautiful, luscious garden poems. I just knew it would be perfect. So those were amazing. Thank you. And before I turn the time over to John, I was going to say, I forgot to mention that, so we're in a webinar format for this Zoom meeting, but there's a Q&A button. If you use your mouse and go down to the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A button that you can click on, and you can ask our panelists some questions. So if you have questions about poetry or the poems or for our poets or for the gardener, anything that might come up, you can post them there, and after we're all done, then we'll be able to kind of answer some of those questions. We'll kind of keep an eye on the time, so we'll see how it goes. So and so up next we have John Trumbull. He's a Spanish professor at Weber State University, and he's also a co-founder of Foodscaping Utah. He lives here in Ogden. So John, take it away.
Okay, let me turn my microphone on. So I'm in my front yard, so I apologize if there's any sound issues. A truck just drove by, so. But it's a beautiful day. It's a great day for gardening, a great day for poetry. What I thought I would do is go through a few slides, talk about what foodscaping is, or at least what our take on it is, and then a few tips to getting started. For those who might want to start growing food and gardening, and then about the benefits of growing food. Probably many of you already know about benefits if you're interested in the event, but if not, then we'll hopefully make it educational at the same time. I'm a teacher, so I can't help but make it educational. We're going to go to share my screen, so hopefully this will work. Okay, is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here's a couple pictures. This is our front yard, like I said, and that's where I am now. This is July 25th, 2018, and then it was a beautiful morning this morning. So I snapped some photos. So thought it would be fitting to start with some artistic photography. I'm not an expert photographer, but we're gonna try anyway. Okay, so here's one from this morning, and then there's another one. And you can see these are cool weather crops. We like to get our garden started early. So we got a lot of cool weather crops going. And there's a few pictures. If anybody has questions as we go, I'll try to keep an eye on that too. But I need to move the Q&A thing is in my way here. Hold on one second. Oops. There we go. Okay, so when we're thinking about foodscaping, a lot of people, or some people might be familiar with what's called edible landscaping, and it's basically the same thing, but we like the term foodscaping just because it really puts the emphasis on food. So we think that you can design with food in mind and put the food really front and center when you're thinking about how you want to orient things. This is our front yard on the other side, that from where I'm standing right now. And that's really all food crops. So we've got eggplant. Well, there's a lot of flowers in there too. In the background, maybe you can see there's amaranth. But then we have eggplant, peppers, and then a bunch of herbs, basil, and then nut trees. So when we design, we try to do a lot of fruit and nut trees and grapes, those kind of things, and then make features out of food. So we have espalier fruit trees and grape trellises and arbors, and that's what I mean by food front and center. And we think you can grow a lot of food in a really small space. Those of you that have done it probably already know this. It's surprising when things are in harvest how much you get out of a really small space, right? And then the other emphasis, we really try to make it look good. Like I already mentioned that, but our last take on foodscaping is we want to think of it, we like to think of it as something that you're actively doing. So whether it's like taking out a chunk of grass and planting food, or helping somebody else out, and I'll tie into that in a minute. Here's a transformation that a group of volunteers helped with Foodscaping Utah, a nonprofit. So, and you can do that in a couple hours if you have it really well planned out, right? So that's foodscaping. So like I said, you might already know a lot about this, but I think the number one thing that really blew my mind away, and I think it does for a lot of people, is the flavor of homegrown fruits and vegetables, right? And those of you who have done it already know, but there's really no food that's more nutritious and more flavorful than what you can harvest right where you live, right? And I think we have gotten kind of away from that as a society. So with foodscaping, hopefully that can be one way to bring food front and center back into our everyday lives. So, you know, if you just have to go out of your door to get it at your front door, then you can get the flavor and the nutrition. It provides a lot of stress relief. It's great exercise. Obviously, gardening is some of the best exercise you can do. You typically have a lot of food at harvest season, so you can either like Sue was talking about with one of her poems with preserving. You can either preserve, and you can do that really well. You always have more than you need at a particular time when something's in harvest, and you can also donate food. Oh, you can't see the whole words on environmental benefits, but the other thing is if you do grow some of your own food, think about how local that is, right? It's right there, and you don't have to have food shipped in from a long ways away. So there's a big environmental impact there. And then it's also using water for something that gives you benefits. And, you know, I think I'm not, or anybody involved with Foodscaping Utah isn't totally anti-grass or anything, but if we're going to use water, why not get something back, right, from it? So we think food's the best thing that you could do with the space that you have. And then the grass, you want to have a small spot, and we actually have a little grass in the backyard, and that's where we play soccer and do things like that. But the front yard, nobody plays soccer at the front yard, right? And then growing food, especially if you do it in the front yard, really builds community. So we're out here a lot and working, and of course, and people constantly kind of slow down, and if they see us out here, they start asking questions. So honestly, we've really started talking to our neighbors a lot more since we started growing food in the front yard. And then some foodscapes that we know are in higher traffic areas, and it really gets a lot of conversation started and questions. Okay, so if you're new to gardening, here's my keys to success. Really, all plants really need three things. I mean, it could be more complicated than that, but really need three things to be healthy, right? And that's sun, water, and soil. So if it's particularly that you're interested in food, and you want to grow fruits and vegetables, if it's a fruiting vegetable, meaning something like a tomato or an eggplant or squash or zucchini, cucumber, something that makes a large fruit like that, you really want to give it as much sun as you can. Minimum would be like 6 hours, but our front yard here is nice because there's no shade whatsoever. So the everything up here is in the sun from when the sun rises over the mountain to sunset. So I mean, really, that's 12 hours of direct sunlight in the summer or more. Water is tricky. We don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but it depends on a lot of factors, how your soil is. Really, the best way to know if you're watering well is to check the soil for the moisture. Like you can use your finger as a great way to do it, or they have soil moisture meters. And with soil, our approach to helping people is really, you're going to be a lot more successful if you do a lot of the work before you plant. You plan it out and you want to create kind of optimal conditions. And that's one reason we really like raised beds, because you can really fast go from I don't have anywhere to grow to a couple hours later or a weekend later, you've got ideal soil. But you can grow a lot of food super successfully not in raised beds too. But Utah particularly, our soil is very low in organic matter. So the number one thing to do is to incorporate organic matter, and we usually do that with compost, okay? So if you have a spot and you want to do a raised bed, our best advice usually is use 50-50, 50% just your topsoil that you have or that you get from somewhere, and 50% compost, okay? And that way you can go from I don't have soil or a place straight to excellent, perfect soil. If you wanted to do it in the ground, you could mix in or start by putting it on top. But if you want to do a lot at once, it might be necessary to kind of mix it in up to 4 inches of compost. So that's a lot to put on at one time. So that's one reason raised beds are easier. A good way to get started. And then the other tip, if you are growing food already, is start with what the things that you like to eat. You know, make a list of the vegetables you want to eat, and then look at each vegetable and kind of think about its conditions. What does it need to be successful? When do I plant it? When, like weather-wise, when would I plant it? Typically, a lot of people in Utah have a pattern of planting after Mother's Day. 10 minutes left. Okay. And I had my wife help me with the time management. I don't want to go too long. 10 minutes, in Utah, your warm season crops, to make it really simple, I like to divide them into two groups, warm season and cool season. You can give a lot more detailed than that. But warm season crops, the best time to plant usually is around Mother's Day here in Utah. Right now would be great. The weather, the forecast looks really good. The chance of a frost is very slim, and warm weather crops are sensitive to that. But I think the number one tip to grow more food is to think about planting much earlier your cool season crops. They can handle some frost, and you can give them a little bit of protection if it gets cold. So we actually, things like in this picture, you see a bunch of leafy greens, right? And here's some carrots and peas, those kind of things. We plant at the end of March or early April. And then that's how, we're already harvesting lettuce now. And that, I think you don't want to do tomatoes that early by any means, but that's a way to think about how you can get more out of less space. So with peas, for example, we like to do what we call at least multi-cropping, where we sow the peas at the end of March, and then we don't plant squash until mid-June usually, and we plant it right where the peas were. So the peas are done by then, and we take those out and put squash in. So you can kind of think of, if you divide your seasons well, you can get 2 crops in one spot. Okay, so let's talk about, if you're interested, Foodscaping Utah is a nonprofit organization, and basically what we do is help people get started growing food. So we do that in a number of ways, and then the first is volunteer days. So maybe you've seen some foodscapes popping up around Ogden if you live in Ogden. What we typically do for that is take a 2-hour block, either on a Saturday or sometimes Saturday morning, or sometimes a Thursday evening, and we bring as many volunteers as we can, and everybody works together to put in raised beds and maybe plant a fruit tree or a grapevine. And then a master gardener, which is usually me, or we have a couple others that are helping us out, teaches a little class on how to grow vegetables vertically, or how to prune fruit trees, or those kind of things, to try to make it a little bit educational also. But the other service there is a volunteer master gardener, like myself, does a consultation in advance to kind of plan out the event, like the Foodscape Day. So, and here's what we'll plant, and here's where to put it. Because we really think that especially now with COVID-19, but even in recent times, there's so many people that really would like to be growing food. We know it's a great thing to do, but it can be very intimidating to get started. So the idea is really to provide some resources to help people get started. So we do that with the volunteer days, and interest has been growing a lot. So we have to be selective on when we can do it, but we're trying to do more. But then we also have a website and a YouTube channel where we have a lot of educational material. So you can check that out if you want to learn some more about growing food. We typically do the classes and the volunteer days with 15, 20 people. But this year with COVID-19, we're going to have to really limit numbers, and we might only have a handful of volunteers, but we're going to try to stream on YouTube live some of the things so you can catch it from home. Maybe we're going to see how that goes. So I think I'm wrapping up here pretty quick. Thank you very much. Come volunteer if you want to learn. Yeah, I think that's about it, Laura. Let's see.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, John.
I got to unshare my screen here. Hold on. You're welcome.
Okay.
There we go.
Great. That was so good, and I got some really good ideas. My backyard is mostly garden, but I've been wanting to convert a lot of my front for a long time now. So you've got me thinking about it. If anybody who's in attendance right now has questions, please type them in. And I might start. I have a couple questions for both of you. John, one of my heroes is Ron Finley, and I used to live in Los Angeles, and I was just curious, like listening to you and kind of watching what you're doing, if you'd heard of him and if he had inspired you at all.
Ron Finley is a huge inspiration for us. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I didn't, for those who aren't aware, Ron Finley has a TED Talk that's a really popular TED Talk. It's excellent. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. I think it's about 11 minutes. It's really good. I didn't see that maybe right when it came out, but about 4 years ago, when I was doing the Master Gardener program and volunteering, part of the Master Gardener program is volunteering and giving back to the community. around then is when I saw Ron Finley's TED Talk, and I thought, you know, there's already one thing that I didn't mention about Foodscaping Utah's program is master gardeners get volunteer hours for volunteering with us. So at the Weber County USU Extension, if you do the Master Gardener program, you're required to do volunteer hours to get your Master Gardener certificate. So I was involved with that and thought, you know, there's so many people that want to help. Gardeners, those of you who are gardeners know, like, we have this information that we want to share with people. So gardeners are always happy to answer questions and help out. So when we were doing that, that was about the time when I saw Ron's TED Talk. And since I've been following him and the things that he's been doing, but there's originally there was a group called, and I think they're still in operation without Ron, but called LA Green Crowns that does something very similar with volunteers. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Yeah, we love Ron. He's very inspirational. He's a great speaker, and has an amazing garden in Los Angeles. He's growing bananas, you know, and active on Instagram too.
Yeah. We discovered Ron Finley and what he was doing, and he started with transforming the parkway strips in, you know, South Central LA, and we discovered him just after we moved back from Los Angeles, and it made me want to move back. So it looks like we have questions coming in, so I don't know if Sunny and John, you guys can look at those.
Ashley asked about nut trees. Should I take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we grow where we are in Ogden. Hazelnuts are a really good choice, and we also grow almonds. Almonds do fairly well, and the reason they aren't grown commercially here is they do bloom early, kind of around when apricots do. If you've seen when apricots bloom. And if there's a late frost in our spring, you can lose some of the almonds. So certain areas of Utah have different microclimates, and actually bench areas are really successful for almonds. But I would look at almonds and hazelnuts, of course, walnuts. We don't grow walnuts here. But they can grow. English walnut can grow fantastic, but it's a huge tree. And it takes a while to produce. But with almonds, they're great, and it really helps you appreciate where almonds come from, because they do take a lot of water and they take a lot of space, and they're related to peaches. Where, think about a peach and the pit, that's the almond that you harvest. Needless to say, it takes a lot of almonds to get, you know, what you would pick up at a store in a bag, and it takes it like, what I'm trying to say is we have 3 almond trees and we eat them all in about 2 weeks because we love almonds so much. Almonds and hazelnuts. Our hazelnuts are a little bit younger, so I don't have as much experience with those. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Maybe Sumi wants to take a question.
Sunny, somebody asked you, who was the poet that inspired you to want to be a writer?
Okay, I saw that. So there are actually 2. One of them they both recently passed away, and they're some of the first contemporary poets that I read, and they were women poets, which I don't know about you, but a lot of us growing up, the poetry we had to read in high school and that, they were dead white guys. And so being able to read a contemporary female poet was really invigorating, and it was a very powerful experience. So the first one, her name was Ea van Boland, and she was an Irish poet, and she passed away, I think, 3 days ago. She's just phenomenal, huge volume of work, just a super down-to-earth person, and her poetry is really accessible and beautiful. So if you want, message me and I'll give you her name. It's Eavanboland, Ea van Boland. She's just wonderful. So if you're kind of thinking of hey, I want to pick up a book of contemporary poetry and see what it's all about. She's fantastic. The other one is Mary Oliver, and she passed away, I think, last year. She was a huge influence on me, and I think a lot of people who are interested in gardening and kind of these subjects would love Mary Oliver, because there are very few people in her poems. She writes primarily about animals and about flowers and about the earth, and each poem has this gorgeous lesson in it, just a life lesson. And her poetry is very well loved by people all over the world, who would often say they don't read a lot of contemporary poetry, but she sort of shines out because she's so easy to understand, and each of her poems sort of takes your breath away. So anyway, I would recommend those two, Ea van Boelan and Mary Oliver, have both been really great influences on me. So.
Great. Should I take another question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like two people asked about animals, right? It maybe depends a little bit on the animal and where you are. I mean, and it could be a huge issue for sure. We, for example, starting with one animal, especially in raised beds where you have really nice compost, we have feral cats that will like to use the beds, and they'll dig, and if a couple of things you can do is temporarily cover the bed. Either sometimes we use like row fabric, and if there's something blocking the surface, like we'll plant in the spring and then use row cover. But if you just put seed in and you have it open, it can be a trouble if there's digging. Another thing I've seen is like a wire mesh kind of border. An obstacle is going to be the best way to prevent animal damage. If it's something like deer, that can be really tough. Or here in Ogden, you might have to deal with raccoons also. The only guarantee really for those is fencing. And that kind of might, maybe you're going to have to design your foodscape totally different and think about how can I make a nice looking fence to keep the animals out. That's the guarantee. With cats, we've sprinkled a little bit of cayenne pepper, and that can be a real deterrent. And then if it rains or something, then you have to reapply. But we find that if it's something digging in the bed, once you have a transplant that's established, you're usually fine. It's when you have something your seeds or your new transplant that it's trouble. Let's see, did I answer all the questions on animals? I think I saw deer. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Oh, and then Olga asked about peach trees. If there's sprouting from the ground and it was, there could be one or two things there. One would, if it's a peach that it's a seed that has started to grow, I would take those out for sure. That would be on a seedling root, okay? And the tree could take 10 or more years to produce fruit. Might not take that long for peaches, but apples, it would definitely take a long time. The way fruit trees are grown now is with a process called grafting, where you take a tree that's already producing fruit and you take a cutting off of it and put it on what's usually a semi-dwarfing rootstock. That might be more information than you wanted, but if you wanna grow peaches or any other fruit tree, you wanna start with a tree from a nursery, or graft your own if you really got into that kind of thing. But because you'll get fruit sooner and you'll also have good qualities in the rootstock, semi-dwarfing or something that's adapted to our climate, hopefully too. So if there's growing from the ground where there used to be a tree, you would also want to prune all those out. What I'm referring to are called suckers. Okay, so like we wouldn't have any right here, but at the base of a tree, you might have sprouts coming up, and you want to cut those off so the tree has energy up higher. Okay. Let's see, did I answer all the questions on that Olga had there? I think so. An anonymous question on the best way to preserve mint. That's a great question. Laura or Sunny, do you guys have a good, we don't grow mint. I'm sure you could dry it. You could dry it. You might be able to come up with like some kind of clever way to freeze it also. Laura, have you done mint or Sunny?
Yeah, we grow quite a bit of mint. Some of it on purpose. Some of it I can't get rid of. So, but I like, my favorite way to preserve it is to dry it. So I'll and I have done that badly. Like I've some trial and error there. I believe that for me, what works best is just a dry, cool space and hanging it up. And then once it's dried, and I'll cut the stalks of mint and then hang clumps of them. And then once it's dried, you can just crinkle all the leaves off and then use them. So you don't have to pick every leaf off one by one before you dry it. Don't take the time to do that for sure. And then, but if you dry it in a space that's too hot, then sometimes you can fry it and it doesn't have any flavor later. So I've done that too, and it didn't work out. So I have a sister-in-law that freezes a lot of our herbs too. So that's an idea.
Yeah, we grew mint quite a bit, kind of like Laura. We started with a small plant, and mint is one of those things that takes over your whole garden. But we treated it very similarly as far as how to use it, similarly as our other herbs. And it was early fall when I knew that the herbs were kind of going out, and I clipped them. And like Laura, I did notice if we tried to dry it in too much heat, it didn't work very well. But I washed them and kind of patted them between paper towels, and then laid them out on a cookie sheet in a sunny spot. And it couldn't be too hot a day, but if it's cool enough a day, it works really well. And you can do this with pretty much any herb. And then I left it out maybe for the afternoon. I went back and checked it, and as long as it's been warm enough, then it dries really well. And then I did the same thing. I just kind of cut the stalk off and pulled you kind of run your finger down in strips, and then I put those in baggies, and I still have those in my pantry. I'll just pull that out, and I've labeled them myself, so I know that I'm using my own individual herbs, and it tastes amazing. So yeah, I think you could do that with pretty much any of them, but mint just as well. Yeah, and it's really good in tea too, if you want to kind of, or lemonade or something like that, just kind of sprinkle it in. It's really nice.
One comment on herbs. I mean, herbs are a great place to get started growing, because they do tend to be easy to grow, and they're so amazing when you grow them at home, right? Like you were saying, the flavor. I mean, I think everything is like that. When you grow it at home, the flavor is better, but herbs are so expensive at the grocery store, and they're usually not fresh, right? So it's a great way to get started. We do and dry rosemary, and we have a lot of lavender that we don't use too much yet, but we got to explore ways. But basil is our favorite herb. And talking about freezing, what we love to do is actually make pesto with the basil and then freeze it. And we still have some, from last year that we can pull out of the freezer. We freeze it in ice trays, and then you just pull one ice cube worth of pesto out, anytime.
Yeah. Well, and there are some summers and falls that I just don't have any time to do anything with some of my plants or some of my herbs. And the nice thing about growing herbs is that most of them flower, and then you get these beautiful flowers, and the bees love them. So all my herbs are just covered with my bees. So if you don't pick them, then you can leave them for the bees too.
We've been blown away by dill when it's in flower. It's just an insect party, beneficial insects. They're all great insects for the garden.
Yeah. So I think there's one more question, John, from Michael, and then I have and then I have one question for Sunny, and then we might wrap up. But okay. Michael was asking about water for almonds, right? They do
they do. He read that almond trees consume about 1 gallon of water per almond. They are fairly thirsty. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot necessarily more than a peach tree, but they usually tend to grow larger than peach trees, maybe not a lot more. But the key, I think, for watering in general, I didn't touch on this too much with water, but is drip irrigation and a very thick layer of mulch. So I wouldn't be surprised if Michael's statistic is right about 1 gallon per almond, but I would guess that would be for commercial production in California. Okay. So if you grow them at home where they have maybe overhead sprinklers and then not as much mulch because they have to get equipment through there, I think you could probably cut that down by 60%, I would guess. You know, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but we actually, our almonds, they love mulch. So we have, it's the thickest mulch we have, but it's 6 to 8 inches of wood chips where the almonds are. And then we run drip irrigation for 3 hours around it once a week. So that's probably, let's see, I mean, when you think about it in gallons, it's a lot, but it produces way more. It's probably 50 to 100 gallons a week. So that is a lot. And that's in July. And then we don't have to water near as much in May. But for example, like we haven't run the irrigation at all yet because of that. That mulch is really a key for anybody trying to grow fruit trees. That's a huge tip. Grow them in mulch. Definitely don't plant them in grass.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sunny, I wanted to just ask you, in case we have anybody here who is interested in writing poetry and doesn't have any experience with that, if you had one or two pieces of advice for anyone wanting to get started.
Okay. First, start reading poetry. I think any writer will tell you that they have to consume a lot of good, high quality writing, imaginative writing that enriches their lives in order for them to sort of feel full and then write their own. So sometimes you can squeeze out a good poem and you haven't read a lot, and that's really fortunate. But I would say most of the time, not to be cheesy, but I don't think writing is all that different from gardening in the sense that you have to have like good soil, right? And you have to have, the elements have to be rich and they have to be ready in order to produce. And so if you're trying to pump out work and you just sort of have a blank spot and you say, I can't think of anything to say. Well, because you haven't brought anything in, right? If you can read some good quality work, and there is so much great contemporary poetry. So go to the bookstore, get on, I don't know, I shouldn't say this, but right now it's probably the most convenient thing, is get on Amazon or go to your local bookstore and ask for poetry and just start reading really great poetry. Find the poets that you like. And then I know that they do classes at Weber, and I don't know if you're closer to Salt Lake, but every university has like a continuing education program where they offer classes, and you'll get to try out different forms and different styles, and you get introduced to a variety of contemporary writers. And that's just a really rich spot to start at, I would say. And then see who you like, right? Who do you remember liking growing up, or what do you enjoy doing? Kind of research that style or that form or that writer, and kind of go deep there and just see where it takes you. There are also lots of online literary magazines that give you great reading material too. So too many for me to name right now, but yeah, just there are all kinds of resources, so you can start pretty much anywhere.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna ask Sunny to read one last poem before we end today. But before I do, I just wanted to again just thank both Sunny and John for being here, and for everybody for attending. We are recording this, and we'll be able to distribute a video. But again, just a huge thank you to our community partners. and Utah Humanities and the Engaged Learning Series at Weber State University, and an Oasis Community Garden. If you do happen to live here in Ogden and you feel overwhelmed starting a garden in your own yard, please go over to Oasis Community Garden and get a plot there and start planting some things. It's a great time of year for that. And if you do want to get started in your own yard, please, you know, John gave you a lot of good tips, and you can check out his website and get some more ideas. So I know about you, but my stress levels have definitely gone up the last couple of months. And so gardening and poetry are both things that help bring that down for me. So hopefully you can make space in your life for both of those things. So Sunny, I'll let you read one last poem, and then I hope everyone enjoys their Saturday evening. So.
Okay, thanks, Laura. And I want to thank John too. We've gardened in maybe smaller scale for years, but like I said, we moved to a new house and we're trying to figure out how to use the space we have here. And in the last couple days, we've transplanted a lot of strawberries and raspberries from my husband's grandfather's garden. And it's been so much work, but I feel like the payoff is going to be tremendous, and I'm so excited. Plus, it's just so good to be outside in the sunshine, and it is a very, very healing and enriching thing. So thank you so much. It was really good. I thought it would be appropriate to end with a poem that just celebrates all life, gardening and animals and the earth. And it's by our current poet laureate for the United States, Joy Harjo. She is Native American, and her poetry is just so celebratory of the human spirit and the earth, and it's always beautiful. So this one is called Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. I get emotional when I read this one, sorry. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. Remember you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, John.
Oh, I was on mute. All right, thank you, Sunny. That was beautiful. I don't want to say anything to mess up the magic of that poem. That was amazing. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sunny, and thank you everyone for being with us tonight. Have a good evening.
I just want to say thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. It was
You're
great.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay.